All right. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining today's AEPA webinar. My name is Mitchell Lilly, and I represent the state of Wisconsin on the Board of Association of Educational Purchasing Agency, better known as AEPA. AEPA is a national purchasing cooperative made up of representatives from educational service agencies across 31 different states, serving as the board of AEPA. Together, we conduct national bids on behalf of our members and extend those competitively awarded contracts to schools, municipalities, and nonprofits in all 50 states. By working together, we alleviate the burden of our customers having to go out to bid themselves. Our collective purchasing power allows us to secure significant savings through volume-based pricing. APA currently has close to 80 awarded vendor partners across 30 categories, including track, turf, courts, instructional and school supplies, maintenance and custodial products, cybersecurity solutions, and so much more. Every year we add additional categories as well. Basically, if you need it, we probably have a contract for it. This monthly webinar series that we do is designed to provide timely, informative content to our customers while also increasing awareness of AEPA and high-quality solutions offered by our vendor partners. In today's session, you'll hear from Paul, Erica, and Bethany from Neuroline, who will talk about why so many students still struggle to read, dyslexia, attention challenges, and the missing cognitive piece. We'll leave time for questions at the end, but please feel free to submit your questions in the chat or at any time. This session is also being recorded for those who may want to revisit it later or share it with a colleague. All right. With that, I think we can get started. Paul, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mitchell. It's a pleasure to be here and working with APA across the entire United States. We're seeing a lot of success in helping children, and that's what really matters. I want to introduce Erica Poupart, and Erica will introduce herself, but she's one of the co-founders of Neuroline, and really we're a company that is built by dyslexics for dyslexics, and then the entire neurodivergent community with some tremendous results you hear all about. And then also Bethany Chelzik, and Bethany's a teacher out of St. Louis, Missouri, one of the early disciples of Neuroline, and she'll has a really powerful story that she'll send about her own son. So I just want to thank everybody for joining us today. I'm sure we'll have a lot of fun, and please ask those questions. And at the end, if you have any business questions, I can handle those too. And so I'm going to hand it off to Eric, and I'll thank you, everybody.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for having me. I'm Erica Poupart, and I'm one of the co-founders of Neuroline. As a very quick introduction, and I'll get more into the details of exactly what Neuroline is. But as a quick introduction, Neuroline is a program that promotes neurological readiness in students who have a hard time picking up the skill of reading, even when they're receiving the best type of reading instruction, science of reading-based reading instruction. All of those kids that still struggle to get it with the right tools, Neuroline is here for them. So without further ado, Bethany, if you don't mind sharing the presentation, I'll get right to it. My goal for my portion of what I'm going to be explaining here is to leave you all with an understanding of exactly what's going on in the dyslexic brain as compared to a typical brain when students are learning how to read. Exactly what's happening from a neurological standpoint that causes that inability to pick up the skill of reading and what we can do about it. So just historically, and I'll go over this quite quickly, it's really important to understand when we're working with struggling readers, or really any reader, that reading is a very recent human development in terms of where we are in our evolutionary scale as human beings. So we have been evolving as humans for millions of years, and reading and written language is only a few thousand years old. So that means that we already evolved our brain, and we then hijacked it to accommodate the skill of reading and written language. Some people have had an easier time of this than others. So what we know is that there is a subset of the population that can learn to read just through exposure. You don't even need to teach them. You expose them to written language, you expose them to reading, and they're slowly going to pick it up and they will eventually start reading all on their own. That's a small subset of the population. Most of the population needs good explicit instruction. Something science of reading based is what we're learning now is most important, with a phonemic component, with multiple layers of explicit instruction and systemic instruction that will get most people to a point where they can read proficiently. And then there's a subset of the population that, even with that explicit instruction, will continue to struggle to pick up the skill of reading and may never read fluently if the proper interventions are not implemented. Our Neuroline was designed for people in that third category primarily. So, what's happening in the brain? This is what we really need to understand if we want to address the root cause of the problem. And this is the question that at Neuroline we asked ourselves when we were developing the program, because we worked with struggling readers, dyslexic readers. My mother is the co-founder of this program. She ran a tutoring center that specialized in teaching dyslexic kids how to read. Importantly, she is also dyslexic. My youngest sister is dyslexic. My daughter is dyslexic. We know that it's not an intelligence issue. So what's happening? Why is it that some people can just learn from exposure, some people can learn from being taught, and some people can't learn at all, or at least automatize it or become fluent in it? To understand what's going on, we have to understand the processes of reading. So very simply, and it gets more complex than this, but in trying to condense it into a 10-minute instructional video, very simply, reading is broken up into 4 main steps. The first step is that our eyes need to see the words that we're trying to read. The second step is that our brain has to process that information that our eyes have seen. That's where visual processing comes in. The third step is that our brain has to assign sounds to the symbols that it just processed. That's where auditory process, phonemic awareness starts coming in. And then the fourth step is that our brain has to analyze those combined sounds to create meaning. And that's where we end up with comprehension. So it looks very simple on the surface, but it is an extremely complex task cognitively. And again, it's a task that our brain was not evolutionarily designed to do. So a dyslexic or struggling reader can have problems with any one of these 4 steps or multiple of those steps in combination. If we're not addressing all of those systems, we're not actually solving the problem. It's also important to note that in order for reading to happen fluently, good research out of the UK from Dr. Keith Rayner has shown us that all of these steps 1 through 4 need to happen about 50 milliseconds. So it happens so quickly, over and over and over for every single word on the page. So we start to process the information and decode it as it's entering our peripheral vision. So we're in the middle of decoding one word, and the next one our brain is already starting to decode. From a neurological standpoint, research from Yale with Dr. Sally Shaywitz has given us a really good understanding of what's happening in a typical brain as compared to a dyslexic brain. So we see that there is a neurological difference in the way that reading is processed in these 2 types of readers. And we know what those parts of the brain are responsible for. So you'll notice that the neurotypical brain on the left-hand side, there is a yellow dot at the bottom, the occipital temporal part of the brain. That is our stage 2. Okay, so after our eyes have seen the information, that's our visual processing. That is where the visual word form area of the brain lives. Visual word form area of the brain is where our brain takes the symbols that it's seen and turns it into a word that it can recognize and understand. You will notice that dyslexics do not leverage that part of their brain. Their visual processing is being underutilized. The next area, the green dot on the left side of the typical brain, is the parietotemporal area of the brain. That part of the brain is responsible for a number of different things, but when it comes to reading, the most important things it's responsible for is auditory processing and sensory integration. So that is where our senses meet and integrate together. So in this case, visual processing and auditory processing integrate together. So that is where our visual information is being delivered and converted into sounds. So that is the stage 3 of our reading process. We're taking those symbols and we're turning them into sounds, which then becomes a word that we can hear in our head. Again, you'll notice that dyslexics are not using that part of the brain. They try to compensate with the right side of their brain, but it is not efficient for that task. And then the third main difference between these two scans is Broca's area. So that's that big purple dot at the top. Now you'll notice that in the dyslexic brain, they are really using that area very, very strongly. And we know why. The reason for that is because that's where our working memory lives. So our working memory is our brain's whiteboard. It's where we work things out, but it is not where we process automatized tasks. So when we're learning something new or we're developing a new skill and we have to think about it really hard, that's where we think about it. That's where we work on it. Once we've automatized it, we no longer rely on that area as heavily. Now, neurotypical brain and the neurotypical readers still use that area of their brain because they use their working memory then to create meaning and comprehension. So when a dyslexic is using their brain so heavily to try to decode and to process that task, they have no more space in their working memory for the higher level skill of comprehension. So this is where everything starts to fall apart, and why you'll often see struggling readers, dyslexic readers, having to heavily decode, sound out words one at a time, and never move into fluent reading, and why they can read a whole sentence and have no idea what it means because their working memory is overloaded with the task of decoding, and they don't have any room left to assign meaning and comprehension. So what can we do about it? Well, the good news is that we know that the brain is plastic. And over the last several decades, we've made a ton of progress in understanding exactly how we can leverage that plasticity in a way that helps us. So all of our brains are plastic, and we are constantly creating new connections and new neurons every day, whether we want to or not. What we've done with Neuralign is we've figured out how to stimulate the parts of the brain that are responsible for good reading and create new neural networks that help support that skill in students who aren't using those parts of their brain. So Neuralign is a gamified intervention, and Bethany is going to go into more details of exactly what that looks like and what she's seen. But it is a gamified intervention that has been designed to create new neural networks in the reading centers of the brain, primarily in the auditory processing centers, the visual processing centers, and the vestibular centers. Once that's done and the brain is working more efficiently for that task, it offloads the working memory, creating more space for higher level skills like comprehension. So is it too good to be true? Obviously, when we're doing something new and we're attacking a problem from a new angle, we have to do research. We have to see if it's effective. We know that it's effective theoretically. We are constantly doing research to prove what it's doing. Anecdotally, we hear evidence all the time of how effective it is. But we've done research with Carleton University here in Ottawa in Canada. They found that students who used Neuroline read an average of 50% more words in 10 weeks, which is a huge amount. That was looking at the data from all of our students who have done the program from start to finish. We've also had independent centers doing research. That is so that we are not involved in it at all. We've asked them to look at students, do pre and post testing using standardized tests. And that data has come back showing that in Word Attack, in the Woodcock Reading Mastery Test, the average gains are 5.3 years after only 15 hours of intervention. So in a very, very short turnaround, they are having huge jumps in their Word Attack skills. And then, of course, the most important thing is passage comprehension, because if you can read 300 words a minute but not understand what you're reading, it doesn't matter. And this is our data that's come back from passage comprehension. Our average gains are 3.7 years after, again, only 15 hours of the program. We are continuing to do more research. Right now, we have two separate researches happening, one involving a school with 800 students who are all behind in their reading. And we have another really exciting research project going on with the Children's Hospital locally, and they're going to be using EEGs to actually look at the brain as the students are doing the program. So we're really excited for that to come out. It should be coming out, the results, we should have the preliminary results later on this year or in 2027. And I'll hand it over to Bethany.
All right, thank you, Erica, very much. I appreciate the scientific background. I'm going to present to you my perspective, having used Neuroline as a parent and then seeing the transformative power of what it can do, then bringing it into my school to work with struggling readers. This is Bo. Bo is now 9.5, going into 4th grade, but during kindergarten and 1st grade, he just could not get on board when it came to reading. He knew his letters, he knew his numbers, and when it came to then ascribing a sound to those letters, it was crash and burn. No matter how much repetition, no matter how much phonetic instruction he received during the day, it was not clicking. And he had a small class size. He had a teacher who was very diligent, very observant, so he wasn't falling through the cracks. But no matter what we did, it did not seem that he could make those connections. So of course that meant he struggled with spelling. He certainly couldn't write or even copy from the board. That's how disconnected those symbols were to him. But interestingly, he couldn't calculate. He couldn't get past counting 5 dots on a die. As soon as we switched to numerals, they meant nothing. So there was a symbol disconnect with numbers as well. He had issues with his S and Z, a lisp as well. So kind of a collection of things going on. And he just wasn't thriving. By first quarter of 1st grade, he came home and said, "Mom, I'm just not good at anything. No one thinks that I'm smart or can do anything." And that broke my heart that at such a young age, he was internalizing this. Knowing that we have a long road to go in the educational process for him, I sprung into action. By the end of 1st grade, he was confirmed to have dyslexia. And so I set into motion, we needed a plan. And again, this graphic that Erica had shared with you, as I came across this made so much sense. He was working very hard, but because he was using the ineffective areas of his brain to lay down that reading process, it just wasn't working. No amount of tutoring or phonetic instruction would stick because his brain was just not wired to properly store and retrieve the input that he was receiving. So it wasn't that he wasn't working hard, nor were the teachers. It was a circuitry problem, if you will, if you think about the brain from an electrical standpoint. So I've been in education for some time, and I was aware of a lot of options, but the problem was at the end of 1st grade, he was not slated to move on to 2nd grade. And first grade didn't seem like a good fit because what else could they do? They already applied a handful of interventions. So we really needed to get at the root cause. So I took a deep dive into the research. I wanted to understand what was going on. And so that meant I needed to find an intervention that addressed the root cause. Any of those Band-Aid approaches or that tutoring, it just wasn't working. And we needed to move past that. My poor son had been in school for a year and a half and was already beat down by how hard he was having to work. I also needed to minimize my burden and my lift. I didn't have the capacity to return to school and become certified in a new system or procedure. And over the summertime, I needed to limit what planning, what differentiating I was doing for him. I didn't want him to continue to have to hammer away with academics all summer long. He needed a break. And I needed something that would eliminate long-term accommodations because it was clear that anything we were doing wasn't working. And of course, his poor little heart needed to be restored. We needed to rebuild his confidence that he was capable. And this was a pretty tall order because I needed results in 2 months. Otherwise, we had to uproot what we were doing educationally. And I have to tell you that Neuroline delivered. Bo spent 40 hours of automated intervention over the summer doing Neuroline. From the assessment to the daily cognitive therapy to the reading passages, all of the activities were automated. I did not require a certification in order to facilitate this for him. I did not have to pull together resources from a variety of outlets or platforms. It was all housed in the program. And while he was enjoying some game-based activities, it was really rewiring those neural pathways, building on the plasticity and malleability of the brain. He's having a good time with the activities, and the root cause is being addressed at the same time. But not only did it strengthen his reading, his attention and his working memory were improved as well, because it was integrating that auditory, visual, and those motor systems. It really made a difference, and it eliminated the need for reteaching and repetition. Bo does not require after-school tutoring every day to reinforce the lessons that he learned in school for 7 hours. He is able to be among those readers who now can pick up what he's reading and understand it. We started the program at the very end of May. By the 1st of August, we had him reevaluated, and he was actually approved to go into 2nd grade. His teachers were stymied. He was reading on grade level all year. He was spelling on track with his peers, whereas the previous year he couldn't spell anything but his own name, which he had memorized, as dyslexics are good memorizers. We also noted as a byproduct that he was actually able to grasp numeracy. He understood what numerals meant, and as a result, he was able to begin solving math problems. He had attached meaning to those symbols as well. We were also surprised his lisp disappeared. So somewhere in his brain that was rooted among the neuroatypical wiring, and he was thriving. He stopped being upset when he came home after school, and he actually enjoyed his class. And this is all because his storage and retrieval systems were finally working. So Bo became one of the 99% of Neuroline users who advanced 2 or more reading grade levels with the 40 hours of targeted therapy. And it worked because it is rewiring those neural pathways. It's not just trying to hammer until a student has it memorized. It's addressing the root cause and not just teaching around the problem. You've seen this graphic before, but the game-paced technology, it's using these split-second timing, as Eric had said. Things have to happen so fast in order for fluent reading to happen. Not only are they decoding, but they are needing to ascribe meaning to what their eyes are seeing. The science behind this is what really made a difference. And I love that it is designed by dyslexics who truly understand dyslexia and they understand the neuroplasticity. This doesn't have to be a life sentence, if you will. At the beginning of this last school year, just out of curiosity, I had Bo reevaluated for dyslexia. And the clinical psychologist said, there's nothing there. In fact, had you not asked me to test him, there would have been no sign for me to have even considered testing him. So he has a complete reversal in his diagnosis. So is it too good to be true? You know, I had one kid, right? Maybe this was just an anomaly. But I had contacted Neuroline and asked them, what do we do to get this in schools? I've never seen a student who was released from their diagnosis before. We happen to have, of course, in every school, students who are really struggling despite targeted interventions. I had some students I was working with twice a week in very intentional phonetic instruction, and it would seem from week to week as if they couldn't remember anything. And as Erica said, they're trying to store this all in their working memory, but by the time they get 2 days down the road, they've tried to store a million other things in their working memory, and it just was not sticking. So Maya, a sweet little first grader, she started below the 10th Lexile percentile. If you use Lexiles to measure your reading passages, this is one of the ways we look at the data. By the time she finished the 40 hours of the cognitive program, she was scoring in the 90th percentile for her grade level, and she actually doubled her initial assessment score. Her reading passages started in that low 10 to 200 Lexile, and as she navigated, she hit as high as 610 to 800 Lexile level reading, and that's with 100% accuracy on her comprehension of those passages. And this was after we had worked for her a year, attempting other interventions that were not successful. Neuroline unlocked reading for her. Then there was Sebastian. He was also in this grade, and he started below the 10th Lexile percentile. He jumped into the 60th percentile after the 40 hours of the program, and he actually nearly tripled his initial assessment score. You'll see he started in the same lower Lexile level, and he reached the 410 to 600, making a significant jump in just the time frame of Neuroline. And then Izzy, this last year, I've been working a lot with her, and actually, bless her heart, she's continuing to work this summer. She's one of our kiddos who, come August, that's when we're going to see it. She and I work together a lot, several days a week for short little blips of time. She started in the 10th Lexile percentile. By the time she was only halfway through the program, she was at the 60th percentile, and she continues to grow. She jumped from that 10 to 200 Lexile range to 410 to 600, and that's after only 3 weeks of reading exercises. She completed the cognitive therapy, and then she was able to apply that in the reading passages. And again, that was after a whole year of targeted intervention that had plateaued for her. So thinking through, who is Neuroline for? We've talked a lot about young ones with dyslexia, but when we have students who are not responding to whole group or targeted interventions, that's our sign that there's something deeper at play here. The student is not lazy, the parents are not dismissive, and the teachers are not unqualified. This is a sign of a neurowiring challenge, despite best efforts. I like to say that Neuroline is for anyone ages 5 to 105. While I am working with younger elementary primarily, I have a parent who saw what Neuroline did for his son, who he could read, but his ADHD was greatly inhibiting his learning process. The father, recognizing the same for himself, he actually has been navigating Neuroline to experience the same. There is the opportunity for school or home access. While I do a mix of both with my students, if it works out that we're able to snag the student for maybe 20 minutes, a half hour, Our school is very low tech, so we don't necessarily have them set up in the classroom just yet. But I'm pulling them out. And like I said, over break, students are able to work on it as well. So they can continue over Christmas break, spring break, and summer break if they need to continue. And then anytime there is comorbidity at play where we have someone who dyslexia, ADHD, autism, Nearline has success even with individuals with cerebral palsy who are seeing great things happen. And the whole reason is it's getting to the root cause. It's not teaching around the problem. So let me introduce the program to you now that we've shared with you several layers of success. The program consists of 3 phases in the framework of a total of 40 hours. So cognitive therapy is first. That is 15 hours. And then the balance of that time comes through speed reading exercises and additional reading exercises. Phases 2 and 3 run concurrently. So as I have a student complete phase 2, which lasts all of 1 minute, then we quickly click on to the next section, phase 3, and we're able to complete those in tandem. Phase 1, cognitive therapy. Again, this is game-based. So students have a bit of a, a video game feel to it. So they have a mouse, they're wearing headphones, and they're sitting at either a PC or a laptop. You can set it up to have them complete the program in half-hour increments or 1-hour increments. Bo originally did it at 1 hour, and that was very challenging. The younger students do very well with the half-hour increment. Older students, if you're doing middle school, high school students, or even adults, the hour would be more appropriate. 3 times a week. For a total of 10 weeks or 5 weeks, depending on the length of the session you choose. So 15 hours of game-based cognitive therapy that's really targeting those visual pathways, the working memory, executive function, and it's getting all that timing firing in their brains. And so after a brief practice with the mouse and I help them log in, students are able to navigate this phase of the program independently. So if I were to have multiple students and I were to have multiple computers, I could log each one in. The first time they go through it, I'm generally on standby close by to ensure that they understand what's being asked of them. And after that, each student can run their particular therapy program independently. And it sets it for them based on their assessment and their age. They are placed appropriately into the program, and it responds to their input and it adjusts according to their needs. Each of the cognitive therapy game activities is targeting 4 or more of these areas. Again, reading is really complex, far more complex than I think we maybe realized up until recently. All of these things need to be happening simultaneously. We need to have these tools in our toolkit at the ready in order to be fluent readers. This is a snapshot of many of the modules within the program. The top row and a half just gives you a brief idea of some of the cognitive therapy games. You'll see those colored circles underneath each of those. That is how many of those targets are being emphasized for any one of those modules. So again, the student thinks he is playing video games, and behind the scenes, there's this incredible scientific process that is at play. I would like to share with you a couple of the games and what they look like. Each of the games is named for a particular country. Interestingly, this is Holland, and the windmill. I'm actually in Holland, Michigan this week, so so the windmill is perfect. What you'll see is a lot of movement on the screen. This is training the student's visual closure, their ability to build an imprint of what the letter or the word is, even if they cannot see the complete image all the time. And again, with cognitive therapy, there are 15 sessions. This video is going to highlight what our lowest level students would be doing the first time they encounter this particular module, as well as the last time. And you'll notice a difference in how it's asking students to process what they're seeing.
Find the matching uppercase letter and add it to the line.
So as you can see, there's a movement component for them. Our youngest students will start out with a very basic phonemes. And then as I move this along just a little bit, you'll see it grow more complex.
And add them to the line.
So you can see that windmill grew more complex. Students are getting just a glimpse of what those words are. From the first session, they were using single letters. At the end, they're working with their CVC words, consonant, vowel, consonant. Some of these actually look like they are CVC words. They're distinguishing between initial letter sounds. There's a lot of complexity that's happening here. What my son really appreciated, this little rainbow meter at the bottom tells him how much time he has left in the program. It also keeps score. So it taps into the competitive nature of some students who really use that as motivators. We try to beat our time every, each subsequent session. And then it also indicates the amount of time a student has in that particular module. All right, this is China, and you'll notice that this one actually comes with a bit of a British accent. Neuroline is across the country in a handful of languages. Of course, if you're in the United States, it will give you the full American pronunciation. And this would be a student who was in level 3. So it goes from junior to level 4. This would be a more advanced student. This is the China module.
Listen to the word, then pick the right word and place it into the square.
Da. A. Da. Da. Ba. Ha. Da. Ba.
Listen to the word, then pick the right word and place it into the square.
Ta. A. Ga. Stag.
You see that from session 1 to session 15, there's an increase in the number of phonemes that the student is required to segment. So starting with 3, moving on to 4, and then, of course, even higher up to 5 or 6 as their level allows. This next one is Egypt, and the screen in the back is filled with hieroglyphs. The students have to work hard to pick out the words that they're looking for. This is session 15, where the student is having to identify multiple words that follow multiple sounds. The lowest students will start out with maybe 2 or 3 words, and they will all follow the same like short vowel sound. But again, it meets them right where they need instruction.
Find these hidden words and add them onto the line.
We sell bells.
Find Find these hidden words and add them onto the line.
The frog was on the log.
So you might have found yourself actively searching for those words as well. It looks like a challenging task, and the first time students do it, it's kind of, whoa, what am I doing here? But this actually has become a favorite for many of my students. They really enjoy the kind of the seek and find kind of process. But man, again, they're playing a game, but there is so much that's going on in their brains as they navigate this task. What I love also is the built-in differentiation just based on a student's level. So they might start out having images that go with the sounds that they are listening for. And then as they progress, there may not be images that go with it. And I love this. It scaffolds for my students right where they need it. Going back to Izzy just a moment, I love this particular set of data. Again, the data is all housed in Neuroline 2, which is phenomenal. If you notice her first handful of sessions, she was scoring quite low as she was just beginning to figure out how to navigate these modules, and the work was being done on her brain. But between session 12 and 13, something happened, and there was a notable difference in her capabilities. We saw it as she was navigating the program. Her accuracy was different, her speed was different, and her attentiveness was altogether different. In these early sessions, she kept asking for little breaks. I found her finding reason to go blow her nose or go to the bathroom or get a drink. And by the time she got to session 13, she sat through the whole thing. Her attention had shifted and her cognitive abilities were clearly functioning at a higher level. And then here is Sebastian when he was in second grade. And this just shows you the progression, right? He starts very low, 321, just being kind of his raw score for the accuracy and speed of completing the modules. And by the end, he has increased that tenfold, what he was capable of doing in that 30-minute segment. All right, that was cognitive therapy phase 1, 15 hours, 3 times a week. You can set it for 1/2 hour or 1 hour. As soon as those 15 hours are done, students get to then apply all that great transformative brain work into their reading tasks. So speed reading, this works very much like a running record if you've ever used any of those. So they'll be presented with the same reading 5 days in a row. 1 minute each day. They start a timer. They have 60 seconds. They're reading the passage aloud. I'm sitting with them to make sure that they are decoding and blending out any new words properly. When the timer goes off, they click on the last word that they read, and each day they are progressing. Again, when it comes to this session, I do sit with the student to ensure accurate reading and provide any decoding support that they may need. And so it will look like this. This is a student who is been doing the program for a little while. It's level 1, so not the youngest grouping. I love that it provides the Lexile measure. This is how I can estimate growth over the course of time. And once the student pushes the timer, begins reading aloud, and then they click the last word that they read. And of course, right away, it rewards them with a point total. This is another sample for students who would be older in our level 3, level 4. They're reading at a higher Lexile level. Additionally, the passage is longer. So the arrow here lights up, indicating that when they get to the bottom of the page, they actually have a little more to read. So it increases the skill level all the way around with this speed reading. So after their 1 minute of speed reading is done, then we jump into the reading exercises. This is where they're going to apply some comprehension, but they're also going to focus on some memory, working memory, and some spatial awareness. This can take between 10 to 20 minutes, depending on the speed of your reader. Again, also 5 times a week for 10 weeks, but it runs concurrently with phase 2. We just do these back to back. I do support the student in the reading portion, particularly my youngest ones, as they're encountering new vocabulary. I'm trying to make sure that they decode properly, but they're able to navigate the games independently. Students will have a reading passage. Again, this is maybe a student who's sitting at the level 3. There's a lexile here that is higher. You can see the sentences all have more words to them. And then this particular student has 20 questions to answer. My youngest students will have 4 to 5 questions. So I appreciate that it's, again, scaffolded for their abilities at that time. But additionally, in this reading exercises, the working memory is so important. If you remember the game Simon, where you had to push the buttons and in the order in which they were presented to you, and it grew increasingly longer, this is Neuraline's version of Simon. That's what I like to couch it as. Students will be given a pattern, and they have to then repeat it by clicking on the buttons in the proper sequence. And it grows again based on their capabilities. So students really like this. Particularly, I think what really kind of rocks their world is every single time they get it correct, one of these characters drops in their box, and it's immediate reward for them. It's immediate feedback. And I think that speaks volumes to our kiddos who've been struggling in the classroom so much. They have been told, oh, that's incorrect. Oh, I'm sorry, that's not right. Do it again, for so long that when they get this immediate feedback, it just does so much to urge them on. And then the old classic game of memory. A lot of these games now make sense. There was a lot of value to them. Just as you would lay cards down on a table, and they're looking through, and they're trying to find the match. Of course, the directions will be in English or whatever the target language is for you. My students really enjoy the graphics on these cards. They pick out their favorites, and they get excited when they select each of those. And then this last one, some spatial awareness. When students are reading, they're doing a lot of left to right, right to left, but sometimes when they're reading, there's a lot that's on the page, and they're working to navigate, you sift through all that is there. This fun little game helps them to think through the process of getting Mr. Koala over to his little bamboo shoot. Students can click one button and then go, but the great challenge is, can you visualize the process start to finish before hitting go? And again, that's just building their spatial awareness, all of which is needed to be a fluent reader. It is not too good to be true. So 40 hours. That first phase is 15 hours of cognitive therapy. The balance of that is building reading fluency and then a working memory and spatial awareness and their comprehension. It is evidence-based, as Erica shared with you. It eliminates years of intervention services. My son Bo has a peer in his class who they chose a different route to address the dyslexia, and he has continued to be told that he needs to come in for tutoring 2 to 3 days a week to prevent backsliding. And Neuroline has allowed us to not have to do that. It provides the cognitive breakthrough that our struggling students need to be able to store and retrieve reading instruction. They're working hard. It's not their fault. There was no lesson planning or differentiation on my part. So I'm thinking in terms of a school where you might have aides, they can run this program without actually having to do any of the planning or any of the assessment. There was no lengthy training or certification. The training modules were in the program for me. I was able to go through and see how every part of it worked within about an hour's time. And what I also love is there's no hidden cost for support or updating materials. Because it is web-based, because all of the training is built within the module, the cost for us was one and done. And then this is Bo. This was beginning of 3rd grade. And I just want to highlight that smile. We hadn't seen that for a couple of years, and Neuroline provided that. And then at some point, I hope to maybe get permission to get some of my other students their images as well, that I can capture their smiles well, so you can see just how far they've come in being able to move past this plateau. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much, Bethany. And the human side of what we do is so important. And just seeing those kiddos. What I did on the business or commercial side of things, I want to yield some time back for questions. So I took the liberty of putting some of my presentation in the chat. You can read it. What I would tell you though is that Neuroline is pre-approved through APA, so it makes things quick. Things can move very quickly, often in days, not weeks or months or lengthy procurement practices. We're basically we have a cost equity, so we do a lot of work with small districts and rural districts. And what we would argue is that these folks are getting the same price as the large school district. Just the large districts can always scale. We argue that we're cheaper because it's a one-time intervention, and we're seeing some interventions that cost as much as $25,000. If they look at the cost of labor for special education instructors, if they could find them, at $50 an hour, and we're coming in at less than $500. So it's incredible, the cost savings. But more importantly, we can change. We just did a pilot we spoke to earlier on another webinar where they had two grade five students that never raised their hands, were up raising their hands within 2 months, speaking in front of their class and reading out loud. They couldn't wait to get at it again. Or the kindergarten child that was not making any progress and now is doing from 4 words to 20 words a minute. That doesn't sound like a lot, but it's a lot. So that's what we do for a living. It's the best job in the world, and with our school district partners helping children, and we're seeing some incredible results. So what I'd like to do is yield that time back to questions, and if we could, if you have some other business questions, I'd be happy to answer those too. So I yield back to the audience. Thank you very much, Erica and Bethany. Mitchell, do you have any questions or anything in the chat that we might be able to answer?
Yeah, absolutely. We do have a couple of questions, and I would encourage anyone in the audience to throw those additional questions in the chat. First question is, and I think some of this you touched on, but what does a plateaued reader actually look like in a classroom?
Yeah, so all of their peers are getting it. And they're the one kiddo who, despite having done the same amount of work, same amount of maybe practice outside of school, they're just not getting it. Or they seem to be getting it in that one lesson that you're working with them one-on-one or in small group. But then the next day you come back on work on it, it's as if they've never seen it. Or maybe they're doing fine working on it for a few days, and then the next week, again, it's as if they had never seen it. You'll see a lot of inconsistency. You'll also see days where the student just seems on it and everything's clicking. And then you'll go through droughts where nothing is clicking. There may be different profiles for what that looks like. But these students are not getting it. Some of these students will also likely struggle with ADD, ADHD, and will sometimes be mislabeled as just not paying attention. But some of their difficulty in paying attention is that they're very much aware that they're different from the people around them. Others are, it's making sense to their peers, but it's not making sense to them. And that anxiety and it leads to agitation. And so sometimes those behaviors are actually masking what's really going on.
And there was a follow-up to that too. Why do some students still plateau even with strong instruction and intervention?
Yeah, I'll jump into that one. And the reason really is because of the neurological foundations that are not working the way that they're supposed to be working. Learning disabilities are neurological in origin. So if the brain is not ready to receive the instruction, they're going to plateau where other ones don't. And there can be a number of reasons why that happens. It can be genetic, it can be environmental, there can be a number of things that cause that. But at the end of the day, the result is the same. The brain is not ready for that instruction.
Yeah. There's a conversation happening in the chat, but I'll just bring it up here for listeners, particularly for the recording. But can this help with older students who suspect of having dyslexia but have never been officially diagnosed?
Absolutely. What we've learned about the malleability of the brain, that doesn't go away. As we age, we may have to work a little bit harder to make some changes in the brain. But based on the neuroscience and how we're able to rewire the synapses and the pathways, there's no cap on the age.
Yeah, we've seen some of our best results in older students.
Nice. The last question I have here is, you mentioned the program timeline. What does like a rollout or like implementation timeline look like?
Can you clarify what is meant by implementation in the sense of, do you
How
mean
long does it take?
I think what they're getting at is if we purchase tomorrow or for the fall, what does that look like in terms of implementation?
Sure. So from a parent perspective, I signed up for the program. I received an email that had me log in and set up. I watched maybe 45 minutes to an hour of the demo videos that guided me through how to support my student, what my student can expect. And then we sat down and we started right away. From a school perspective, the only lag time that we had was just thinking through at what point during the day am I going to access that student so that they can work on the program. So that was just me communicating with teachers. Hey, what's the best time for me to snag this kiddo for 30 minutes so that we can work together? Compared to any other program I've seen, this one is literally like plug and play. As soon as you have signed up and you receive your links, you have a portal as a teacher or administrator. You can register your students and they're able to sit down and do their first automated assessment right away.
Thank you. All right, well, the clock just struck 1, so we are at our time. Thank you to the Neuroline team for your time and expertise. Thank you to everyone who joined today. If you have any follow-up questions, please do not hesitate to reach out to any of your AEPA representatives. You can find their contact information on our website, aepacoop.org. Our next webinar is going to be held on July 22nd. And we're going to feature Romtech, who build park and recreation buildings. We hope you join us for the next session and enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks again.
Thank you, everybody.